Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the cool metal wall of the research station, watching through the reinforced viewport as the Catharan ship docked with their facility. 3 years of negotiations had led to this moment, the first official cultural exchange between Earth and the Catharan Empire. The aliens had agreed to send one of their finest scientists to work alongside human researchers, studying the unique properties of the neutron star system they both orbited. The airlock hissed open, and Elena straightened her lab coat nervously. She had been chosen as the primary liaison, partly due to her expertise in xenobiology, but mostly because she was one of the few humans who had successfully learned the complex Catharan language during the preliminary communications. The figure that emerged from the airlock took Elena's breath away. Zarathis stood nearly 7 feet tall, her silvery blue skin shimmering under the station's artificial lighting. Her features were sharp and elegant, with large violet eyes that seemed to analyze everything they touched. Forearms moved with fluid grace, each ending in delicate 6-fingered hands. Her cranial ridges caught the light, creating an almost crown-like appearance around her elongated skull. "Greetings, Dr. Vasquez," Zarathis spoke in accented but perfect English, her voice carrying harmonic overtones that human vocal cords could never produce. "I am Research Prime Zarathis of the 14th Scientific Conclave. I bring knowledge gifts from my people." Elena bowed slightly, remembering the cultural briefings. "Welcome to Research Station Prometheus, Research Prime. I am honored to work alongside such a distinguished scientist." Zarathis's violet eyes narrowed slightly, studying Elena with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "Your species is smaller than our records indicated, yet you claim remarkable achievements in stellar manipulation and energy harvesting." "Humans have always been resourceful," Elena replied, gesturing for Zarathis to follow her through the station's corridors. "We may not have the physical advantages of other species, but we make up for it with determination and creativity." The Catharan made a sound that Elena had learned was equivalent to thoughtful humming. "Determination. Yes, we have heard of this human trait. Our xenopsychologists find it fascinating. Most species reach a plateau in their development. Humans seem incapable of accepting limitations. They passed through the main laboratory where other human researchers looked up from their work with barely concealed excitement. Most had never seen a living alien before, and Zarathis commanded attention simply by existing. Her forearms moved independently as she examined equipment, her scientific curiosity overriding any social awkwardness. "This gravitational wave detector," she said, pointing to a massive machine that dominated one wall. "It appears to be based on primitive laser interferometry. How do you achieve any meaningful resolution with such crude methods?" Elena bristled slightly at the word primitive, but maintained her diplomatic composure. "We've enhanced the basic design with quantum entanglement protocols and temporal feedback loops. It may look simple, but it can detect gravitational fluctuations at the subatomic level." Zarathis approached the machine, her upper hands manipulating a handheld scanner, while her lower hands took notes on a device that looked like crystalline tablet. "Impossible. The theoretical framework doesn't support such precision with your technology base. Would you like us to demonstrate?" Elena asked, unable to keep a slight edge from her voice. "Please." Zarathis stepped back, all forearms crossed in a gesture that Elena recognized as skeptical attention. Elena activated the detector and adjusted the targeting array toward the neutron star. Within moments, the machine began registering micro-oscillations in space-time itself, displaying the data on holographic screens that materialized around the device. Zarathis stared at the readings, her violet eyes widening. She approached the displays, her scanner working frantically to analyze what she was seeing. "These readings, they're detecting gravitational echoes from stellar collapse events that occurred over 1,000 years ago. The precision required for such measurements should be impossible with your computational matrices." "Human ingenuity," Elena said with a smile. "We tend to find ways to make the impossible work." The Catharan scientist moved around the machine like a predator studying prey, her forearms working in perfect coordination to document every detail. Elena found herself watching the alien's movements with growing fascination. There was something hypnotic about the way Zarathis moved, a fluid grace that spoke of a completely different evolutionary path. "Your cardiovascular system," Zarathis said suddenly, looking up from her scanner. "It's remarkably inefficient. Single heart, linear circulation, no redundancy. How does your species survive with such fragile biology? Elena laughed, surprising herself. The same way we make impossible machines work. We're stubborn. Human hearts may be fragile, but they keep beating through situations that would kill most other organs. Stubborn, Zarathus repeated, as if testing the word. This is the same as determination? Related concepts. Determination is choosing to continue despite obstacles. Stubbornness is refusing to quit even when logic suggests you should. Zarathus made that harmonic humming sound again, but this time it seemed almost amused. Your species continues to present interesting paradoxes. Our preliminary studies suggested humans were barely beyond their primitive phase. Yet you demonstrate capabilities that challenge our understanding of developmental progression. Elena felt a flash of irritation. Perhaps your preliminary studies were incomplete. The words came out sharper than she intended, and Zarathus's head tilted in what Elena was learning to recognize as surprise. The alien's four eyes fixed on Elena with renewed interest. You challenge my assessment directly, Zarathus observed. Most species show deference to Cytheran scientific authority. It is refreshing. Humans don't do deference very well, Elena admitted. We tend to question everything even when we probably shouldn't. Especially when you shouldn't. I suspect, Zarathus said. And Elena could have sworn there was humor in those harmonic tones. The rest of the day passed in a blur of technical demonstrations and cultural exchanges. Zarathus proved to be a brilliant scientist, able to grasp human innovations quickly and suggest improvements that Elena's team hadn't considered. But more than that, she seemed genuinely interested in human thought processes, asking questions about motivation and decision-making that went far beyond their scientific collaboration. As the station's artificial night cycle began, Elena found herself alone with Zarathus in the observation deck, both of them staring out at the slowly rotating neutron star that dominated their view. Your species, Zarathus said quietly, they mate for emotional attachment rather than genetic optimization. Elena glanced at the alien, surprised by the sudden shift in conversation. Among other reasons, yes. Love, companionship, shared experience. Humans are social creatures. The Cytheran Empire finds this inefficient. We select genetic partners through careful analysis and computational modeling. Emotion is considered a contaminating factor. That sounds lonely, Elena said without thinking. Zarathus turned to look at her, violet eyes reflecting the neutron star's strange light. Lonely. Another human concept our xenopsychologists struggle to quantify. Elena realized she was standing very close to the alien scientist, close enough to see the subtle patterns in her silvery blue skin, close enough to catch the faint ozone scent that seemed to surround her. There was something magnetic about Zarathus, something that transcended species boundaries. Perhaps, Elena said softly, some human concepts can only be understood through experience. The words hung in the air between them, loaded with possibilities neither of them fully understood. The next several weeks fell into a productive rhythm. Elena and Zarathus worked side by side, their collaboration yielding breakthrough after breakthrough in neutron star analysis. The Cytheran's advanced theoretical framework, combined with human innovative, engineering created results that neither species could have achieved alone, but it was their conversations during breaks that Elena found most intriguing. Zarathus displayed an insatiable curiosity about human behavior, particularly the seemingly irrational decisions that drove human innovation. Elena found herself explaining concepts like intuition, inspiration, and emotional reasoning to someone whose entire worldview was built on logic and calculation. Today you chose to recalibrate the quantum resonance array based on what you called a gut feeling, Zarathus observed as they shared dinner in Elena's quarters. The alien had adapted remarkably well to human food. Though she required mineral supplements that tasted like chalk, the recalibration improved our data quality by 18%. How do you explain this success through non-analytical decision-making? Elena leaned back in her chair, watching Zarathus delicately manipulate her eating utensils with two hands while taking notes with the other two. Sometimes the subconscious mind processes information faster than conscious thought. Patterns, correlations, subtle indicators that we notice without realizing it. What feels like intuition might just be our brains working faster than we can track. So human intuition is actually rapid unconscious analysis? Partly, maybe. But there's also experience, creativity, willingness to try something that might fail. Elena gestured toward the window where the neutron star painted everything in its eerie glow. Your people probably would have calculated every possible outcome before attempting that recalibration. We try things because they feel right, even when we can't prove they'll work. Zarathis set down her utensils, her forearms creating a complex gesture that Elena had learned indicated deep contemplation. The Catharan Empire has eliminated randomness from most scientific endeavors. We calculate probabilities, minimize variables, proceed only when success is virtually guaranteed. That sounds incredibly safe. Safety ensures survival and progress. Randomness leads to waste and failure, Elena smiled. But it also leads to discovery. Some of humanity's greatest breakthroughs came from accidents, mistakes, or completely irrational leaps of faith. Like your warp drive development, Zarathis said. Our historical analysis indicates your Dr. Chen achieved faster than light, travel by deliberately destabilizing a fusion reactor, in a way that should have destroyed his laboratory. Instead, it opened a hole in space-time and revolutionized interstellar travel. Chen said later he had no idea it would work, but the math felt incomplete, so he tried something impossible. Zarathis made that harmonic humming sound, but this time it carried notes Elena hadn't heard before. Your species regularly attempts the impossible and somehow succeeds. Our xenobiologists have no theoretical framework to explain this phenomenon. Maybe that's because you're trying to explain it instead of experiencing it. The conversation took a turn Elena hadn't expected when Zarathis suddenly stood and moved to the window. Her reflection in the transparent aluminum showed an expression Elena was still learning to read, but it seemed troubled. Experience, Zarathis repeated. For the past month, I have experienced human methodology, human innovation, human friendship. These experiences do not fit within my understanding of optimal behavior. Elena joined her at the window. What do you mean? Collaboration with humans should be purely transactional. Knowledge exchange, technological advancement, mutual benefit through logical partnership. Instead, I find myself concerned about your well-being. Interested in your opinions on matters unrelated to our research, anticipating our conversations with what I can only describe as pleasure. Elena felt her heart rate increase. There was something vulnerable in the alien's admission, something that transcended the clinical detachment she usually maintained. Is that bad? Elena asked quietly. It is inefficient, Zarathis replied, but her voice carried uncertainty. Yet it seems to enhance our collaborative effectiveness rather than diminish it. Another paradox. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the neutron star's rotation create shifting patterns of light across the station's hull. Elena became acutely aware of Zarathis's presence beside her, the subtle warmth radiating from her alien physiology, the way her breathing created barely audible harmonic tones. Elena, Zarathis said, and it was the first time she had used Elena's first name without the formal title. May I ask you something of a personal nature? Of course. Human mating behavior involves significant emotional attachment prior to reproductive activity. This seems to serve no biological purpose beyond partner bonding. Why do humans engage in such complex courtship when simpler biological imperatives would be more efficient? Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. The question was clinical, but something in Zarathis's tone suggested it wasn't purely academic curiosity. Because the emotional attachment is the point, Elena said carefully. Humans don't just mate to reproduce. We connect, share experiences, create bonds that go beyond biology. Physical intimacy becomes a way of expressing feelings that language can't quite capture. And this emotional attachment enhances the physical experience dramatically. Connection, trust, genuine caring for your partner's pleasure as much as your own. It transforms a biological function into something profound. Zarathis turned to face her, violet eyes searching Elena's expression with scientific precision. Would you be willing to help me understand this human concept through direct experience? The words hung between them like a challenge to everything Elena thought she knew about interspecies relations. Her mouth went dry as she realized what Zarathis was asking. Zara, Elena said softly, using the shortened version of her name for the first time. Are you sure? This would be completely unprecedented. We don't know anything about Kithran-human compatibility, physical or emotional. I have been analyzing the question for several days, Zarathus replied with characteristic directness. My medical scanner indicates our physiologies are more compatible than initial assessments suggested. But more importantly, I find myself drawn to you in ways that my training suggests are impossible. Elena reached out hesitantly, her human hand touching one of Zarathus's alien ones. The Kitharan's skin was warm, with a texture like fine silk over steel. Zarathus's breath caught in those harmonic tones, her other three hands moving uncertainly. This is uncharted territory for both our species, Elena said. Then perhaps it is time for another impossible human experiment. Zarathus replied, and Elena could hear something that might have been hope in her harmonic voice. Elena's decision came from the same place as her intuitive recalibration of the quantum array, a feeling that some things were worth trying, even when you couldn't calculate the outcome. She stepped closer to Zarathus, close enough to see the complex patterns of silver and blue in her alien skin. Then let's discover something new together, Elena whispered. The kiss that followed was unlike anything either of them had experienced. Zarathus's lips were softer than Elena expected, her mouth carrying a faint taste of ozone and starlight. The alien's four arms encircled Elena with gentle strength, creating a sensation of being completely enveloped in warmth and protection. When they broke apart, both were breathing heavily. Zarathus's violet eyes had darkened to deep purple, and Elena could feel her own heart racing with anticipation and nervousness. Your emotional attachment theory, Zarathus said breathlessly, requires further experimentation. Elena laughed, some of her nervousness evaporating. I think we can arrange that. What followed was indeed unprecedented, a night of discovery that neither species' scientific protocols could have predicted. Elena learned that Kitharan physiology was far more sensitive and responsive than she had imagined, while Zarathus experienced the reality of human emotional intimacy for the first time. By morning, both of them knew that their relationship had crossed boundaries that would reshape everything they thought they understood about interspecies interaction. 3 weeks after their first night together, Elena noticed the changes. Zarathus had become more animated in their scientific discussions, her four arms gesturing with increased enthusiasm as she explained complex theoretical frameworks. Her violet eyes seemed brighter, more expressive, and she had started incorporating human colloquialisms into her speech in ways that made Elena smile. But it was during their morning routine in the laboratory that Elena first suspected something significant had occurred. The quantum resonance patterns have shifted again, Zarathus announced, reviewing their latest data captures. The gravitational harmonics are showing unprecedented stability. Elena looked up from her workstation, noting the way Zarathus moved with fluid grace between multiple instruments. That's good news for our research timeline. We might actually finish the stellar mapping ahead of schedule. Indeed. Though I suspect our collaboration has introduced variables that our initial projections did not account for. Zarathus paused. In her work, her upper hands continuing to manipulate controls while her lower hands traced complex patterns in the air. A Kitharan gesture Elena had learned indicated deep thought. What kind of variables? Emotional integration appears to enhance cognitive processing in ways that Kitharan science has not previously documented. My analytical capabilities have increased by approximately 12% since we began our intimate partnership. Elena smiled. So human emotional attachment actually makes you a better scientist? Paradoxically, yes. The emotional security provided by our bond seems to free cognitive resources that were previously allocated to social anxiety and interpersonal uncertainty. Zarathus turned to face Elena, her expression carrying warmth that had been absent during their first meeting. Your species continues to demonstrate advantages that our initial assessments failed to identify. Elena felt a surge of pride, not just for humanity but for their personal relationship. But that pride was tempered by a growing concern she hadn't shared with Zarathus. For the past week, she had been experiencing unusual fatigue, accompanied by subtle changes in her body that she couldn't quite identify. Zara, Elena said carefully, when we first became intimate, you mentioned your medical scanner indicated our physiologies were compatible. How detailed was that analysis? Zarathus's head tilted in the gesture Elena now recognized as focused attention. Quite comprehensive, tissue compatibility, biochemical markers, reproductive system analysis, genetic mapping. Why do you ask? Reproductive system analysis? Elena's voice came out sharper than she intended. Of course. Standard protocol for any potential biological interaction. The scanner indicated that while our species evolved on different worlds, certain fundamental biological processes show remarkable similarity. Zarathus paused, her violet eyes narrowing. Elena, what concerns you? Elena took a deep breath, trying to organize her thoughts. Human females undergo specific biological changes when they become pregnant. Hormonal shifts, physical symptoms, metabolic adjustments. I've been experiencing some unusual patterns that might indicate. She trailed off as Zarathus's expression shifted from curiosity to something approaching alarm. The alien quickly retrieved her medical scanner and approached Elena with clinical efficiency. Please remain still, Zarathus requested, running the device over Elena's torso with two hands while her other two manipulated controls. The scanner hummed with increasing intensity before producing a series of harmonic chimes that Elena had never heard before. Zarathus stared at the readout, her violet eyes widening with what Elena could only interpret as shock. What is it? Elena asked, though she suspected she already knew. According to these readings, you are indeed pregnant, Zarathus said slowly. The fetal development patterns indicate hybrid characteristics, human neural structure combined with Kithaeron physiological enhancements. This should be genetically impossible. Elena sat down heavily, her mind racing through the implications. But it's happening anyway. Yes. And based on the development timeline, conception occurred during our first intimate encounter. Zarathus set down her scanner, all four of her hands trembling slightly. Elena, I must confess something that may alter your perception of our relationship. What? Kithaeron reproductive biology is remarkably efficient. When we choose to reproduce, conception occurs with near certainty on the first attempt. However, this only happens when specific biochemical and emotional conditions are met simultaneously. Zarathus began pacing, her agitation evident in the rapid movement of all four arms. I did not expect these conditions to be triggered by our interaction. Elena felt a chill of understanding. What conditions? Deep emotional attachment combined with optimal genetic compatibility assessment. In essence, Kithaeron physiology only permits reproduction when the individual has identified an ideal long-term partner, through both logical analysis and emotional bonding. The laboratory fell silent, except for the distant hum of the station's life support systems. Elena stared at Zarathus, processing the implications of what she had just learned. So you're saying that your body chose me as an ideal genetic partner, and that's why I'm pregnant? Essentially, yes. Though the choice was not entirely unconscious. My feelings for you have been growing stronger each day, far beyond what I initially expected or believed possible. Elena stood and walked to the observation window, looking out at the neutron star that had brought them together. This is going to complicate everything, isn't it? Catastrophically, Zarathus agreed. Interspecies reproduction is unprecedented in galactic history. When news of this pregnancy reaches the Kithaeron Empire, it will trigger political and social upheavals that could reshape diplomatic relations across multiple star systems. And that's assuming the pregnancy is viable, Elena added. We have no idea what carrying a human Kithaeron hybrid will do to my physiology, or whether the child can survive. Zarathus approached her, reaching out with one hand to touch Elena's shoulder. My medical knowledge suggests the pregnancy should proceed normally, with some enhanced development characteristics from the Kithaeron genetic contribution. Your child will likely be stronger, more intelligent, and longer-lived than baseline humans. Our child, Elena corrected softly. Our child, Zarathus agreed, and Elena could hear complex emotions in those harmonic tones. Elena, I want you to know that regardless of the political complications this will create, I am honored to share this experience with you. Elena turned to face her alien partner, seeing vulnerability and determination in equal measure across Zarathus's elegant features. Even though it happened on the first try and will cause interstellar incidents, Especially because of that, Zarathus replied with something that might have been humor. Your species has taught me that the most significant discoveries often come from attempting the impossible. Elena felt a smile tugging at her lips despite the magnitude of their situation. Well, we're about to discover whether interspecies pregnancy counts as impossible or just highly improbable. Given human determination and Kithaeron efficiency, I suspect we may be about to prove that nothing is truly impossible when two species are stubborn enough to make it work. Elena laughed, some of her anxiety easing. You're starting to sound very human, Zara, and you are beginning to demonstrate Kithaeron adaptability. Perhaps our child will inherit the best characteristics of both species. As they stood together in the laboratory, surrounded by the instruments and data that had brought them together, Elena realized that their personal relationship had become something far larger than either of them had anticipated. They weren't just lovers anymore. They were the beginning of something entirely new in galactic history. We need to start documenting everything, Elena said, her scientific mind beginning to organize their next steps. Medical data, developmental patterns, physiological changes. This pregnancy could revolutionize our understanding of interspecies compatibility. Agreed. Though I suspect we should also prepare for some very difficult conversations with our respective governments. Elena nodded, already dreading the explanations she would have to provide to Earth Command. But as she felt Zarathus's warm presence beside her, she also felt a growing sense of excitement about the unknown territory they were exploring together. Ready for another impossible human experiment? She asked. With you, Dr. Elena Vasquez, I believe I'm prepared for anything. The transmission from the Kithaeron High Command arrived exactly 72 hours after Zarathus filed her initial pregnancy report. Elena watched her partner's face change as she absorbed the contents of the message, violet eyes shifting from curiosity to disbelief to what could only be described as fury. They want me to return immediately for medical evaluation and reproductive counseling, Zarathus said, her harmonic voice carrying discordant undertones that Elena had never heard before. The message specifically states that my emotional compromisation has led to genetically reckless behavior that threatens Kithaeron biological purity. Elena felt her own anger rising. Biological purity? What does that even mean? It means the High Command views our relationship as contamination rather than discovery, Zarathus replied, all four of her hands clenched in tight fists. They are demanding immediate termination of the pregnancy and psychological reconditioning to prevent future emotional attachments to inferior species. Inferior species? Elena's voice came out dangerously quiet. Their words, not mine, though I suspect my response to their demands will clarify my current loyalties quite definitively. Zarathus moved to her communication console and began composing a response with rapid, aggressive movements that spoke of barely controlled rage. Elena read over her shoulder as she typed, "To the High Command Scientific Directorate, I respectfully decline your request for immediate return. My current research partnership has yielded unprecedented scientific discoveries and represents the most significant advancement in interspecies collaboration in galactic history. Furthermore, the pregnancy you describe as genetically reckless may prove to be the key to understanding biological compatibility across evolutionary boundaries. I request extended research authorization to document this unique developmental process." Elena whistled softly. "That's going to go over well. I suspect it will result in immediate termination of my research credentials and possible exile from Kithaeron space," Zarathus replied calmly. "However, I find that I care more about protecting our child than maintaining political standing with individuals who mistake ignorance for wisdom." The response from Earth Command arrived 6 hours later, and Elena found herself wishing she had inherited some of Zarathus's diplomatic training. Her commanding officer's face filled the screen, his expression oscillating between fascination and panic. "Dr. Vasquez, according to your preliminary report, you are carrying what may be the first documented human-alien hybrid in history. Do you understand the magnitude of what you've accomplished?" "Yes, sir. Though I'm not sure accomplished is the right word. This wasn't exactly planned. Planned or not, you've potentially opened a new chapter in human evolution. Our xenobiology team is beside themselves with excitement. However, certain elements within Earth Command are expressing concerns about the security implications of hybrid offspring. Elena felt her protective instincts flare. What kind of security implications? Questions about loyalty, capability, potential advantages that could shift the balance of power in galactic politics. Some are suggesting that this pregnancy represents an opportunity for intelligence gathering about Kytheran physiology. Absolutely not, Elena said firmly. This child is not a political tool or a research specimen, and if anyone approaches this pregnancy from that angle, they'll discover exactly why humans are considered unreasonably stubborn. Her commanding officer smiled slightly. I expected that response. For what it's worth, Dr. Vasquez, you have my full support. I'm recommending that you be given complete autonomy over your medical care and research documentation. This discovery belongs to humanity, but more importantly, it belongs to you and your partner. The call ended, leaving Elena and Zarathus alone in the communication chamber, with the weight of two entire civilizations' expectations pressing down on them. We're on our own, Elena observed. Perhaps that is preferable, Zarathus replied. Both our species seem determined to politicize what should be a purely scientific and personal experience. Over the following weeks, they developed a routine that balanced scientific documentation with the practical realities of an unprecedented pregnancy. Zarathus's medical expertise proved invaluable in monitoring the hybrid development, while Elena's human perspective provided insights into the emotional and psychological aspects of carrying a child. The pregnancy progressed with remarkable stability, though Elena's body underwent changes that no human woman had ever experienced. Her strength increased dramatically, her sensory acuity sharpened, and her mental processing speed accelerated. Most remarkably, she began developing a limited form of the harmonic communication that characterized Kytheran speech. The fetal development is enhancing your physiology rather than compromising it, Zarathus observed during one of their daily medical scans. Your cardiovascular efficiency has improved by 30%. Your neural connectivity has expanded, and your immune system is operating at levels that approach Kytheran standards. So our baby is making me more like you while it develops? It appears to be optimizing your biology to support hybrid characteristics. The process suggests an unprecedented level of genetic cooperation between our species. Elena placed her hand on her growing abdomen, marveling at the life developing within her. What do you think it will be like? Our child, I mean. Zarathus joined her at the observation window, her own hand covering Elena's. Intelligent, certainly. Strong. Adaptable. Possibly capable of perspectives that neither of our species could achieve alone. She paused, her harmonic voice carrying notes of wonder.
Elena, I believe we may be creating the first truly hybrid
consciousness in galactic history, and, both our governments want to control it, which is precisely why they must not be allowed to do so. The crisis came during Elena's second trimester, when a joint Kytheran human diplomatic vessel arrived at the research station unannounced. Elena and Zarathus watched through the viewport as the massive ship maneuvered into docking position, its hybrid design clearly intended to demonstrate cooperative intentions. They're not taking no for an answer, Elena observed. Then they are about to learn why humans consider retreat an unknown concept, Zarathus replied, her forearms moving in complex patterns that Elena recognized as preparation for battle. The delegation that boarded, their station consisted of 3 humans in diplomatic uniforms and 2 Kytherans in the elaborate robes of the scientific directorate. Their leader, a stern-faced woman named Ambassador Chen, approached Elena and Zarathus with professional courtesy that barely concealed underlying tension. Dr. Vasquez, Research Prime Zarathus, I bring greetings from both Earth Command and the Kytheran High Council. We've come to offer you full support for your groundbreaking research, along with resources that will ensure the best possible care for your developing child. Elena exchanged glances with Zarathus, both recognizing the diplomatic language that preceded demands they wouldn't want to accept. What kind of support? Elena asked carefully. Immediate transfer to a joint research facility where teams of specialists from both species can monitor your pregnancy and document the developmental process. Complete medical support, unlimited research funding, and guaranteed protection for both you and your child. In exchange for what? Zarathus inquired, her harmonic voice carrying suspicious undertones. Full cooperation with medical and genetic analysis, comprehensive documentation of all developmental data, and agreement to raise the child in an environment where it can serve as a bridge between our species. Elena felt her maternal instincts surge with protective fury. You want to turn our baby into a political symbol? We want to ensure that this unprecedented development benefits all of galactic civilization, rather than creating new sources of conflict. What they want, Zarathis said quietly, is to control the first hybrid consciousness because they fear what it might choose to become if left free to develop naturally. Ambassador Chen's diplomatic mask slipped slightly. This child will possess capabilities that could shift the balance of power across multiple star systems. Surely you understand that such potential must be carefully managed. Elena stood, her enhanced physiology making the movement more fluid and powerful than any human motion Ambassador Chen had ever witnessed. My child is not potential to be managed. It's a life to be protected, nurtured, and allowed to choose its own path. Dr. Vasquez, please be reasonable. I am being reasonable, Elena interrupted. I'm reasonably certain that anyone who refers to my baby as a strategic asset is not qualified to be involved in its upbringing. The meeting continued for another hour, but Elena and Zarathis had already made their decision. When the delegation finally departed, they left behind ultimatums rather than agreements. Elena and Zarathis had 1 week to accept the transfer, or both governments would consider them to be acting against the interests of galactic stability. Well, Elena said after the diplomatic vessel had departed, I think we just declared independence from both our species. Then perhaps it is time to discover what two stubborn scientists can accomplish when they refuse to accept the impossible. Zarathis replied, her harmonic voice carrying notes of determination that resonated with Elena's own resolve. Elena stood in the station's command center, her enhanced senses allowing her to perceive the subtle vibrations that indicated approaching ships long before the sensors registered them. The pregnancy had transformed her physiology in ways that continued to surprise both her and Zarathis, granting her capabilities that seemed to bridge human intuition with Kitharan precision. 3 vessels, she announced, her voice carrying harmonic undertones that hadn't existed before her pregnancy. 2 from Earth Command, 1 from the Kitharan fleet. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. Zarathis looked up from the communication console where she had been sending encrypted messages to contacts within both governments. Our support network is smaller than I hoped, but more dedicated than either of us expected. Over the past month, since their refusal to accept governmental oversight, Elena and Zarathis had discovered that their situation had inspired unexpected allies. Scientists from both species who believed in academic freedom, military personnel who respected individual choice, and civilians who saw their relationship as proof that cooperation was possible across any divide. Dr. Sarah Kim from the Titan Research Station sent another data package. Zarathis continued, manipulating multiple displays with her 4 hands. Her team has been analyzing our pregnancy reports and believes they can synthesize medical support protocols that could help other interspecies couples. Elena felt a surge of pride mixed with responsibility. Other couples? We've started a trend? Apparently our relationship has inspired several human Kitharan partnerships across the outer colonies. None have achieved pregnancy yet, but the precedent we've established has given them hope that such connections are possible. The weight of that knowledge settled over Elena like a comfortable blanket. Their personal choice had become something larger, a demonstration that the barriers between species were not insurmountable. The approaching ships, Elena said, returning her attention to immediate concerns. Are they coming to negotiate or to force compliance? Zarathis's expression darkened. According to my contacts within the Kitharan fleet, the ship they've sent carries a termination council. Their mission is to end our research by any means necessary and ensure that no hybrid offspring threatens what they call species integrity. And the Earth ships? 1 diplomatic, 1 military. Commander Rodriguez from the diplomatic vessel sent an encrypted message indicating they still hope to convince us to accept protective custody. The military vessel's intentions are less clear. Elena placed her hands on her abdomen, feeling the strong, steady movements of their child. The pregnancy was now in its final trimester, and medical scans indicated that the birth could occur within the next few weeks. The timing of the approaching confrontation felt like terrible coincidence. We need to leave, Elena said suddenly. Not to one of their facilities, but somewhere we can control the circumstances of our child's birth. I've been considering the same option, Zarathus agreed. But where can we go that both governments won't eventually find us? Elena smiled, her enhanced cognitive abilities already formulating a plan that combined human creativity with Catharan precision. Remember what got us into this situation in the first place? We're going to attempt something impossible. The plan Elena outlined was audacious even by human standards. Using their research station's gravitational manipulation equipment, they would create a temporary space-time distortion around the neutron star, generating a pocket of altered physics that would mask their location and prevent any pursuing vessels from following them. The energy requirements alone should make this impossible, Zarathus observed as they worked frantically to modify their equipment. And the risk of creating an uncontrolled gravitational cascade could destabilize the entire system. But the theoretical framework suggests it could work, Elena countered. Her pregnancy-enhanced intellect processing complex calculations with speed that amazed her. And if we're careful with the harmonic resonance patterns, we can create a stable pocket that will last long enough for our child to be born in safety. You're proposing to hide inside a gravitational anomaly while giving birth to the first hybrid consciousness in galactic history. When you put it like that, it does sound a bit dramatic. Zarathus made her harmonic laughing sound, but Elena could hear tension beneath the humor. Elena, if this plan fails, we could all die in a way that violates several fundamental laws of physics. And if we stay here, our child becomes a political prisoner from the moment of birth. I'd rather risk impossible physics than accept certain captivity. The approaching ships began their final approach as Elena and Zarathus completed their modifications. The station's gravitational manipulators, originally designed for precise scientific measurements, had been reconfigured into something that bordered on a weapon of mass destruction. Incoming transmission from all three vessels, Zarathus announced. They're demanding immediate surrender and cooperation. Tell them we're busy, Elena replied, initiating the gravitational distortion sequence. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Space around the neutron star began to ripple like disturbed water, gravitational waves propagating outward in patterns that Elena's enhanced senses could perceive directly. The research station, protected by carefully calculated force fields, rode the distortion like a ship on stormy seas. The approaching vessels found themselves caught in gravitational eddies that made navigation impossible. Their ships were powerful enough to avoid being destroyed, but not advanced enough to penetrate the distorted space that Elena and Zarathus had created. We're receiving emergency transmissions from all three ships, Zarathus reported. They're demanding to know what we've done and threatening dire consequences if we don't cease our activities immediately. Let them know we'll be happy to discuss terms after our child is born, Elena replied, then doubled over as the first contraction hit her with unexpected intensity. The gravitational distortion had an unforeseen effect on Elena's pregnancy. The altered spacetime around them seemed to accelerate the final stages of labor, while simultaneously providing a cocoon of protection that made both mother and child stronger. The baby's coming now, Elena gasped, leaning against Zarathus for support. Here, in the middle of a gravitational anomaly while three military vessels attempt to arrest us, I think our child has inherited human timing along with everything else. What followed was unlike any birth in recorded history. Elena's labor progressed with remarkable speed and minimal pain, her enhanced physiology working in perfect harmony with the hybrid child she carried. Zarathus proved to be an ideal partner, her four hands allowing her to provide support, monitor vital signs, and maintain the gravitational distortion simultaneously. The moment of birth came as the neutron star completed another rotation, bathing the station in pulses of exotic energy that seemed to welcome the new life into existence. Elena felt a sensation of completion that went beyond physical relief, as if the universe itself had been waiting for this child to arrive. Their daughter emerged into the world with eyes that showed intelligence beyond her moments of age. Her features a perfect blend of human and Catharan characteristics. She had Elena's dark hair and warm skin tone, but Zarathus's elongated skull and the beginning of cranial ridges that would develop as she grew. Most remarkably, she was born with four arms, though they appeared to be human in structure rather than carrying the Catharan configurations. She's perfect, Elena whispered, cradling her daughter while Zarathus completed the birth process with medical precision. She's impossible, Zarathus corrected softly, which makes her absolutely perfect. The child opened her eyes and looked directly at both parents with an awareness that seemed far beyond newborn capabilities. When she made her first sound, it carried harmonic tones that neither species had ever produced, a new form of communication that bridged human emotion with Kithaeron complexity. "What should we call her?" Elena asked. "Nova," Zarathus suggested without hesitation. "She represents the birth of something entirely new in the galaxy." As if responding to her name, Nova turned toward the observation window where the neutron star painted everything in its strange light. Her hybrid features reflected the cosmic glow, and Elena realized that her daughter truly was something unprecedented. Not just the first human Kithaeron hybrid, but the beginning of a new form of consciousness that could think and perceive in ways neither parent species had imagined. Outside their gravitational sanctuary, the three pursuing ships maintained their positions, unable to penetrate the distorted space but unwilling to abandon their missions. Elena and Zarathus had bought themselves time, but eventually they would have to emerge and face the consequences of their choices. "What happens next?" Elena asked as she nursed Nova, marveling at how naturally the hybrid child adapted to human feeding patterns. "Now we prove that the universe is large enough for new possibilities," Zarathus replied, her harmonic voice carrying notes of determination and hope. "And we teach our daughter that some things are worth fighting for, no matter how impossible they seem." Nova made a soft sound that might have been agreement, her unusual eyes reflecting starlight and infinite potential. 3 months after Nova's birth, Elena stood in the observation deck watching her daughter demonstrate abilities that shouldn't have been possible for an infant of any species. Nova could already support herself with her 4 arms, her hybrid physiology developing at an accelerated rate that combined human adaptability with Kithaeron efficiency. "She's manipulating the gravitational sensors again," Zarathus observed from her monitoring station, all 4 of her hands working to track Nova's influence on their equipment. "Her bioelectric field is interacting with our instruments in ways that suggest she's naturally attuned to space-time distortions." Elena smiled as Nova turned toward them, her unique eyes showing intelligence that grew more remarkable each day. The child seemed to understand their conversations despite her age, responding to complex concepts with expressions and gestures that indicated comprehension far beyond normal development. "The pursuing ships have maintained their position for 12 weeks, Elena noted, checking their long-range sensors. "They can't penetrate our gravitational bubble, but they're not giving up either." "Perhaps it's time we gave them something to truly worry about," Zarathus suggested, a note of mischief in her harmonic voice that Elena had learned to recognize. Their situation had reached an unexpected equilibrium. The gravitational anomaly they had created provided perfect protection, but it also trapped them as effectively as any prison. More importantly, their supplies were beginning to run low, and Nova's accelerated development meant she would soon outgrow the station's limited facilities. "I've been receiving encrypted communications from our supporters," Zarathus continued, manipulating multiple displays to show message logs. "The Outer Colony Coalition has formally recognized our right to exist as an independent family unit. Several frontier worlds are offering sanctuary. And what's the catch? We have to get there first, which means leaving our protective bubble and running the gauntlet of ships that are waiting to capture us." Elena lifted Nova, marveling at how solid and strong her daughter felt. The hybrid child had already grown beyond normal infant proportions, her 4 arms moving with coordination that suggested accelerated neural development. "What if we don't run?" Elena asked suddenly. "What if we go out there and make them understand what Nova really represents?" Zarathus turned from her instruments, violet eyes showing surprise. "You're suggesting we surrender?" "I'm suggesting we demonstrate that their fears are based on ignorance, not facts. Nova isn't a threat to galactic stability. She's proof that cooperation is possible across any boundary." The idea that formed in Elena's mind was characteristically human in its audacity. Rather than fleeing or hiding, they would emerge from their sanctuary and invite representatives from both governments to meet Nova personally, to see for themselves what a hybrid consciousness could accomplish. "Elena, both governments have made it clear they view our daughter as a strategic threat. Voluntarily exposing her to their scrutiny could result in permanent separation, or it could result in the kind of breakthrough that changes everything." Elena looked down at Nova, who was watching their conversation with those impossible eyes. She's not afraid of them. Maybe we shouldn't be either. The message Elena composed was broadcast simultaneously to all three waiting ships. To the representatives of Earth Command and the Kithrin Empire, we invite you to send small delegations to our station for a peaceful meeting. You have demanded answers about our daughter's nature and capabilities. We offer you the opportunity to discover those answers through direct observation rather than speculation. However, any attempt at coercion or forced separation will result in our immediate departure through means that you cannot follow or prevent. The responses came within hours. All three ships agreed to send representatives, though their transmissions made clear that this was viewed as a negotiation for surrender rather than a diplomatic meeting between equals. Elena and Zarathis spent the next day preparing their station to receive guests, while Nova watched the proceedings with what Elena could swear was amusement. The child's development continued to astound both parents. She had begun making sounds that carried complex harmonic patterns, as if she were inventing a new form of communication that transcended both human and Catherian languages. The delegations that arrived were smaller than Elena had expected, but more diverse. From Earth Command came Dr. Patricia Wells, a xenobiologist Elena recognized from academic conferences, accompanied by a military attaché whose job was clearly to assess Nova's potential threat level. The Kithrin delegation consisted of Research Prime Thylaris from the Scientific Directorate and a representative from the Genetic Purity Council, whose presence made Zarathis visibly tense. Dr. Vasquez, Research Prime Zarathis, Dr. Wells began formally. We appreciate your willingness to discuss this situation. However, I must emphasize that both governments consider this child to be a matter of critical importance to interspecies relations. Please call her Nova, Elena replied firmly, and she's not a matter. She's our daughter. Research Prime Thylaris stepped forward, her forearms moving in patterns that Elena recognized as formal diplomatic protocol. The Kithrin Empire requires comprehensive genetic analysis to determine the extent of biological contamination that has occurred through this unauthorized reproduction. Zarathis responded with harmonic tones that carried clear warning notes. Nova is not contaminated, she is evolved, and anyone who approaches her with hostile intentions will discover that her parents are fully prepared to protect her. The tension in the room was palpable, until Nova herself resolved it in a way that none of the adults had anticipated. The 3-month-old child pushed herself up with her forearms, looked directly at each visitor in turn, and began producing a series of harmonic sounds that somehow conveyed welcome, curiosity, and gentle amusement. Dr. Wells stared in amazement. She's attempting to communicate with us directly. The neural development required for that level of social awareness shouldn't be possible at her age. Nova develops according to her own schedule, Elena said proudly. She seems to have inherited the best characteristics of both species, while developing capabilities that neither of us anticipated. The Genetic Purity Council representative approached cautiously, her scanning equipment active as she studied Nova's bioelectric patterns. The readings are unprecedented. This child shows no signs of genetic instability or developmental abnormalities. In fact, her cellular structure appears to be optimized in ways that our best genetic engineers cannot achieve. She's not just healthy, Zarathis added. She's enhanced, stronger than human baselines, more intuitive than Kithrin norms, with sensory capabilities that bridge both species' perceptual ranges. Nova, apparently growing tired of being discussed rather than addressed directly, reached out with one of her small hands toward Research Prime Thylaris. When the Kithrin scientist cautiously extended a finger, Nova grasped it with surprising strength and began producing a complex harmonic pattern that made the alien's eyes widen. She's attempting to establish direct neural contact, Thylaris said in amazement. But this should be impossible without technological interface systems. Nova doesn't seem to recognize the word impossible, Elena observed. She finds ways to do whatever she needs to do. The meeting continued for hours, with both delegations conducting increasingly sophisticated tests and observations. Nova seemed to enjoy the attention, demonstrating abilities that evolved in real time as she learned to interact with each new person. She showed particular interest in the various scanning devices, reaching out to touch them with results that suggested she could somehow understand and influence their operations. Dr. Wells finally stepped back, shaking her head in amazement. I need to report to Earth Command that everything we thought we knew about hybrid genetics was wrong. This child doesn't represent a threat to human development. She represents the next stage of evolution. And the Kithaeron Empire? Elena asked, looking at Thyler S. Must reconsider its entire approach to interspecies relations, the alien scientist admitted. If such remarkable results can be achieved through emotional bonding, rather than calculated genetic planning, perhaps our methods have been incomplete. The Genetic Purity Council representative had remained silent during most of the meeting, but now she spoke with something approaching wonder in her harmonic voice. This child demonstrates that genetic diversity strengthens rather than weakens biological systems. The Kithaeron Empire has much to learn from this development. As the delegations prepared to return to their ships, Elena felt a surge of hope that their gamble had paid off. Nova had won over their visitors not through political maneuvering but simply by being herself, remarkable, impossible, and absolutely perfect. What happens now? Helena asked Dr. Wells. Now we convince two entire civilizations that the future belongs to cooperation rather than separation, the xenobiologist replied. And we do everything possible to ensure that Nova and other hybrid children like her have the freedom to choose their own paths. As the visitors departed, Elena and Zarathis were left alone with their daughter in the quiet observation deck. Nova looked up at both parents with those incredible eyes, made a sound that carried notes of satisfaction. 2 years after Nova's birth, Elena stood in the assembly hall of New Harmony Station, the first truly integrated human Kithaeron research facility in galactic history. Her daughter sat on her lap, no longer the infant who had changed the course of interspecies relations, but a remarkable toddler whose continued development defied every prediction their scientific communities had attempted. The interspecies cooperation accords have been ratified by 17 member worlds. Zarathis announced to the assembled crowd of humans, Kithaerons, and the growing number of hybrid children who had been born since Nova proved that such unions were possible. Formal diplomatic relations have been established, and joint research initiatives are proceeding ahead of all projected timelines. Elena smiled as Nova wriggled in her lap, the child's forearms reaching toward the holographic displays that showed star maps of the expanding cooperative territories. At 2 years old, Nova could already read both human and Kithaeron scripts, communicate in complex harmonic patterns that bridged both languages, and demonstrate problem-solving abilities that impressed scientists from multiple species. Mama, stars moving, Nova said, her voice carrying both human emotional warmth and Kithaeron harmonic precision. Her vocabulary had exploded over the past 6 months, and she seemed capable of learning new concepts at an accelerated rate that amazed her parents daily. Those are the trade routes, sweetheart, Elena explained, pointing to the flowing lines that connected star systems. Ships traveling between worlds carrying people and ideas and discoveries. Like us? Nova asked, her unique eyes bright with curiosity. Exactly like us. People going to new places to learn new things and make new friends. The assembly continued with reports from various research teams, but Elena found her attention divided between the formal proceedings and her daughter's reactions to everything around them. Nova had become something of a celebrity across both civilizations, not because anyone was exploiting her unique nature, but because she represented hope for a future that neither species had imagined possible. Dr. Patricia Wells approached their seats during a break in the proceedings. Elena, I have some remarkable news from the genetic analysis teams. The hybrid children born over the past year are showing even more diverse capabilities than we initially projected. More diverse how? Each child seems to inherit slightly different combinations of enhanced traits. Some show exceptional mathematical abilities, others demonstrate intuitive understanding of complex engineering principles, and a few appear to have natural aptitude for interspecies communication that goes beyond anything we've documented. Nova looked up at Dr. Wells with interest. Dr. Patsy, you study babies? Dr. Wells laughed, kneeling down to Nova's eye level. I study how special children like you help us understand what's possible when different peoples work together. All peoples same inside, Nova said with the matter-of-fact certainty that characterized most of her observations. Different outsides make thinking better. Elena and Dr. Wells exchanged glances. Nova's insights often carried wisdom that seemed far beyond her chronological age, as if her hybrid consciousness allowed her to perceive patterns that escaped single-species thinking. "She's right, isn't she?" Dr. Wells said quietly. "Diversity of perspective enhances cognitive capability. We're discovering that hybrid children don't just combine traits from both species, they develop new capabilities that emerge from the interaction between different genetic and cultural frameworks." The formal session resumed, with Zarathis presenting the latest results from their continued research into hybrid development. Elena felt a surge of pride watching her partner command the attention of the assembly with the same elegant authority she had displayed during their first meeting, though now her harmonic voice carried warmth that had been absent in those early days. Analysis of 23 hybrid children born across 12 star systems indicates that human Kithaeron reproduction consistently produces offspring with enhanced capabilities in multiple domains, Zarathis reported. These children demonstrate superior problem-solving abilities, accelerated learning rates, and most significantly, natural aptitude for bridging cultural and conceptual differences between species. A researcher from the audience raised her hand. "Research Prime. What are the long-term implications of these developments for both species' evolutionary trajectories?" Zarathis smiled, an expression that had become more natural over their years together. "We appear to be witnessing the emergence of a new branch of consciousness that combines the best aspects of both parent species while developing entirely novel capabilities. In essence, we are observing evolution in real time." Nova clapped her four hands together at the mention of evolution, apparently recognizing the word from their conversations at home. "Growing new," she announced proudly. The assembly erupted in good-natured laughter, and Elena realized that Nova had unconsciously summarized complex scientific concepts in terms that everyone could understand. Her daughter had a gift for making the profound seem simple and the impossible seem inevitable. After the formal session ended, Elena and Zarathis found themselves in their new quarters aboard New Harmony Station, watching Nova play with toys that had been designed by engineers from both species. The child seemed equally comfortable with human creativity and Kithaeron precision, often combining elements from both approaches in ways that produced unexpected innovations. "Do you ever regret how everything unfolded?" Elena asked as they watched Nova build a complex structure that somehow incorporated both artistic beauty and functional engineering. "You mean, do I regret falling in love with a stubborn human scientist, becoming pregnant on the first attempt, defying two galactic governments, hiding in a gravitational anomaly to give birth, and accidentally triggering the most significant diplomatic revolution in recorded history?" Zarathis replied with harmonic tones that carried clear amusement. "When you put it like that, it does sound like we might have overachieved slightly. Elena, 3 years ago I believed that emotion was a contaminating factor in scientific research and that genetic optimization required careful calculation to achieve optimal results. Now I understand that the most significant discoveries come from connections that cannot be predicted or controlled." Nova looked up from her construction project, apparently sensing the serious tone of their conversation. "Mama sad?" "Not sad, sweetheart. Happy and grateful and amazed by how wonderful our family turned out to be." Nova stood and walked over to her parents, her forearms allowing her to embrace both of them simultaneously. "Love makes everything better," she said with the absolute certainty that characterized her worldview. Elena felt tears gathering in her eyes as she held her daughter and partner, marveling at how a chance scientific collaboration had transformed into something that reshaped galactic civilization. The latest reports indicate that human Kithaeron partnerships are being established across 37 star systems. Zarathis mentioned softly, "Our personal choice has become a movement that will define the future of interspecies relations, and it all started because we were both stubborn enough to believe that impossible things might be possible after all." Nova pulled back from their embrace and looked at both parents with those remarkable eyes that seemed to see possibilities where others saw only obstacles. "Not impossible," she said firmly. "Just not done yet." Elena laughed, recognizing her daughter's unconscious echo of human determination combined with Kithaeron precision. Nova represented more than just the successful fusion of two species. She embodied a new way of thinking, that could address challenges neither parent civilization could have solved alone. Outside their viewport, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, but Elena knew that the galaxy itself was changing. Ships carrying hybrid families moved between worlds that had never imagined cooperation was possible. Research stations staffed by integrated teams were making discoveries that pushed the boundaries of known science. Children who thought in ways that transcended the limitations of any single species were growing up to tackle problems that had seemed insurmountable. "What do you think she'll choose to become when she grows up?" Elena asked, watching Nova return to her construction project with renewed focus. "Whatever she wants," Zarathus replied. "That's the point of everything we've fought for, ensuring that hybrid children have the freedom to choose their own paths rather than having their destinies determined by political necessity." Nova looked up from her toys and smiled at both parents. "Going to build bridges," she announced with casual certainty. "Big bridges between all the stars so everyone can visit everyone." Elena and Zarathus exchanged glances, both recognizing that their daughter's seemingly simple goal would probably require the kind of impossible engineering that had characterized their entire relationship. "That sounds like a wonderful plan, sweetheart," Elena said. "And knowing you, you'll probably figure out how to make it work." Nova nodded confidently and returned to her construction, already beginning to sketch designs that looked suspiciously like theoretical frameworks for faster-than-light transportation networks. Elena leaned against Zarathus, watching their daughter casually plan to revolutionize galactic infrastructure, and realized that the most impossible thing about T